Welcome to the Gamescape, everybody. My name is Jeric, and today we're in Chaos Gate Demon Hunters. This is my guide to the Purgator class, which is my second guide on the base classes that you get at the start of the game. We're going to be looking at the Purgator today. We're going to take a look at his abilities. We're going to talk a little bit about what he does for your team and how you might want to outfit him, how you might want to build him from a skills perspective. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the rest of your team can kind of mesh with him and help him out doing what he is going to be doing as well. So without any further ado, let's dive right into his abilities here. As always, when you're looking at how you're going to skill up your knights, you want to take a look at their ability that they get to start with. So that's in the center here, we can see he gets the Provident ability. This knight gains +1 ammo for their equipped ranged weapons. That's a really nice ability for the Purgator class. And it's just random, it's just how it is, but he managed to draw that, and that's a great ability. So extra ammo for his gun, always going to be good. He's going to be your range specialist, is kind of the role that he fills. Area of effect damage, and he's got a couple of really nice debuffs. Those are going to be his bread and butter as well. When you're starting out, you kind of want to think about exactly how you want to do that, and there's a few ways that you can do it. He has access to the 3 heavy weapons. You've got the silencer, you've got the Psi Cannon, which is what he's holding here in his hands, and then you've got the incinerator as well, the big flamethrower, and then he's also got grenades that he can specialize into. So we're going to talk about all of those things, but let's start with the silencer. All right, why would you want the silencer? Silencer's long range attack. Base silencer's range is 14, which is very long. This ability here gives him +4 to that range, so his silencers become range 18. He can also pick this ability here that gives him the ability to ignore damage penalties for the enemy being in partial cover. Does not help against full cover, but there's not a lot of full cover on most of the maps. Most of the time they're going to be in partial cover if they're anywhere, and the ability to just shoot past that and not lose damage from it's going to be key in getting rid of the enemy quickly. If you've seen my top 10 tips and tricks videos for tactical combat, one of the things I talked about is the best defense is a good offense. And I know that that's super cliche. I know that, but it's really true in this game. And the reason why it's true in this game is because you don't miss. There's no missing. You don't miss. The bad guys don't miss. Anytime you shoot, you're going to hit. Unless you're shooting directly into full cover, then you'll miss. But that's really the only thing. Reducing damage is the best you can hope for. And so if you can get the kills in before they have a chance to shoot back at you, that's just going to increase your survivability of your knights, and it's going to do nothing but good things for you. And part of that is being able to deliver damage yourself, especially in that first turn of combat. And so being able to ignore the cover that they're in is really good. This one increases +2 crit damage for this particular weapon. That's only for this weapon, only for the silencer, but it will stack with a couple of other abilities that he has potentially that we'll look at here just shortly. And then he also gets support fire. The interceptor, if you've seen my guide on the interceptor, also has this ability. Believe it or not, the interceptor does it better, because this ability does 2 extra damage. Basically, whenever one of your teammates shoots an enemy and you're in range of that enemy as well, your Purgator is going to shoot that enemy and do 2 extra points of damage. 2 points of damage, not that much, and he is burning up an ammo to do it. The interceptor does it better because he's got extra abilities here that increase that damage up to 5. And this 2 points or the 5 points for the interceptor, it doesn't matter which weapon you have. It's just that much damage no matter which ranged weapon you have and how much damage it does. So this is questionable, I think, for the skill point that it costs you to get this skill. It's not useful. It's just kind of limited useful. Another thing you have to be really careful about is if your support fire kills the target, nobody gets the will points for the kill. So I don't know if that's a bug or if it's supposed to be that way, but you do have to kind of be careful about that. I think I neglected to mention that in my interceptors video, but if somebody shoots at him and then this guy shoots and those 2 points kill him, nobody gets the will points for that target dying. So that is something to kind of keep in mind too. So if you're going to come up into this tree, you definitely want these 3 abilities. I don't know if you want this one or not. That's completely up to you. If you think it's going to be useful over time, then great, take it. But it does use up ammo, and so you do want to keep that in mind. There is a very tiny cost in that you might run yourself out of ammo doing it. Down below here, you got the Psi Cannon, which is the second weapon that this guy can use, the second heavy weapon. It's a shorter ranged weapon. Base range on the Psi Cannon is only 10. Its base damage is 5, however, as opposed to 4 for the silencer. So it does slightly more damage. It also has the Psychic Onslaught ability, which gives it a area 2 burst attack that does area effect damage. And it does this particular set of abilities here enhances that. This one gives it +1 damage. This one also gives it +1 damage. This one increases the area by +1, so it's now an area 3 bubble instead of area 2. This ability right here, you're gonna want no matter how you're skilling out your Purgator, because this is rapid reload. When this knight's ammo reaches 0, they have a 50% chance to reload automatically. That can be increased if you have focus, granting gear or abilities or anything else. That goes up by that percentage as well. This is going to save you a lot of action points over the life of your soldier and over all the different combats that you have. And if you've seen my tactical combat tips and tricks video, action points are everything in this game. And anything that saves you from having to spend action points, in this case reloading, is just as good as being granted action points. So that's going to be very useful over the course of your campaign. You're going to want to get this early on probably and make use of it. It's not going to be the first thing you go for, probably. There's actually a couple of more important things, and we'll talk about that here in just after we go over all the skills. But this is going to be one of the early things that you want. So those are the two primary heavy weapons that you're going to be using. He can also use the incinerator. He doesn't get any special skills for the incinerator, though. That's more the purview of the purifier class, which is the advanced version of the Purgator class. They specialize in the incinerators, and we'll talk about the incinerator a little bit when we go over gear. It's not my favorite weapon, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Starting out, he's got good around the circle abilities. He's got will points on 3 points here, extra willpower. This guy's going to use a ton of willpower, and so you're going to want as many will points as you can get on him. This ability right here is the questionable one. This one upgrades your Storm Bolter to give armor piercing to your Psi bolts. The problem is he's not going to be using a Storm Bolter in most cases. You can put a Storm Bolter on his arm and give him a melee weapon if you want to, but I think that you're missing out on a lot of what this class has to offer by not putting a heavy weapon in his hands. Now, there might be a case or two that you can make for doing it, and maybe if you want armor piercing, then you do want to have the Storm Bolter and just use that instead of the heavy weapon. But the problem that I've found with armor piercing is, yeah, you punch through that armor and you do damage directly to the enemy's health, but it doesn't help your teammates. And by that I mean, if you can't kill that guy by yourself, your teammates still have to punch through all that armor and get the job done. And so it doesn't help. Armor break is much better than armor piercing as far as that goes, because now you're doing basically extra damage because armor break happens before damage is calculated. So if you're doing 4 damage, but you get 1 point of armor break, let's say, you're actually going to do 5 points of damage if they have a point of armor to break, right? So I think that's a lot more valuable because it helps your whole team out. They don't have to chew through all that armor later. And if the enemy lasts for more than 1 round, which later in the game they will, then that's armor that doesn't have to be chewed through again on the second or third turn or whatever. But in order to get to these other good skills, you need to take that anyway, so you're going to end up with it, unfortunately. That's just a skill point that you have to spend. Over in here, these are really good skills here too. This one increases +2 crit damage to all of your ranged attacks. That will stack with this as well. So if you've got the silencer and you've got this and you've got this, you're +4 on your crit damage, which is going to be nice. +1 ammo here and +1 ammo here. Really, really good for you because, again, that's your bread and butter. You've got these heavy weapons, and the less time you can spend reloading and the more time you can spend shooting damage down range, the better. In the middle here, you've got the return fire ability. When shot by an enemy, this knight has a 50% chance to shoot back automatically. This is an auto ability, 1 use per turn. Like the Interceptor class, this class also has the ability to gain the +1 use per turn for all autos. That's actually over here on this side. We'll talk about that in a second. So this one's good. It's okay anyway. Chance to shoot back when they're shooting at you. That's another chance for you to do more damage. And so anytime you can dish some damage for free, then that's a good time. So pick this if you like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to take it. It's not crucial, but again, once you get to where you have this ability, which is where we're going to kind of talk about in a minute, this has the chance to trigger twice per turn instead of once. So that's this side of the tree. I would pick one of these two weapons to skill into, but no matter which one you pick, you still want this ability down here. You just may not want to pick up these two necessarily if you're going to use the silencer, but this one right here is going to serve you very well even with a silencer, so definitely think about this one. All right, let's talk about this guy here. Like I said, this guy has a couple of nice debuffs. This is the first one, and probably the lesser of the two, but still it's a good one. So Emperor's Light, target blast over area 3 at range 10, afflict blinded 100% and purge 50%. Blinded is going to reduce the amount of damage the enemy can do to you with their ranged attacks, and so you're mitigating damage coming at you, and the fact that it's over an area effect means you can probably catch more than one guy in it, unless your enemy is really super spread out. I've used this in a couple of my missions in my legendary campaign to pretty good effect. When I got stuck knowing that I was not going to be able to take on the entire group and I was definitely going to be taking some fire back, I went ahead and blinded them, and it really made it much easier to weather that storm, especially if you can get Aegis shields up at the same time. You're probably going to take a little damage still, but it's not going to be nearly as bad, especially against a lot of enemies, if you can get them blinded and reduce their incoming damage. So that's a really good ability. Over here, you can warp charge it with this ability to give 100% purge. Now, I talked about in my Interceptors video, if you haven't seen it, I talked about their ability to do purge on their melee attack, and I mentioned that the Purgator is a much better class if you need that ability, and this is why right here. So you take this, this gives you +1 area to this ability. Now you've got 100% purge at range 10 over area 4. That's much better than hitting somebody with a melee attack and doing the purge that way. You can get multiples this way and at range, so it's much better. The cost isn't terrible. 1 action point, 2 will points to warp charge this thing up, and you're golden. Now, do you need purge? I don't know, depends. Later on in the game, you start facing enemies that gain mutations every turn, and if you can't get to them right away, they can get to be pretty powerful, and so it's really kind of up to you. This ability is pretty good to be able to start peeling off those mutations, and you still get the blinded on top of it, so it's a good debuff. I like this one. It's not as good as this other one though. This one right here, I would say this is your absolute clutch best ability that your Purgator class has, and that is the Sanctified Kill Zone. Target blast anywhere over area 3 at range 10, afflict vulnerable. Vulnerable means the enemies that are afflicted suffer 2 damage extra from every hit they take from any of your knights, or any type of damage they take. Going back to best defense is a good offense, and being able to do as much damage in that first round of combat as you can and kill as many enemies as you can to mitigate the incoming return fire. This ability there is clutch. It's going to do a great job of helping you kill a lot of bad guys in that first round of combat. And then you stack the warp charge on top of it that gives you armor break 3. We just talked about armor piercing. This is armor break, and it's going to reduce the armor of all of the things that it hits by 3, which is about what the early Plague Marines have. Most of them have 3 to 4 points of armor early on. Later on, things get to be much more armored than that. But being able to strip 3 armor points off and inflict vulnerable on them just really does a nice job of making them easier to kill. This one here increases it for an extra turn, increases the affliction for an extra turn, which means if you don't get them the first time, you don't have to spend the will points to do it again. And then this ability right here, you're going to want. This one is +1 use per turn for all of your autos. That includes your reload. That includes your return fire. That includes your silencer support fire ability. That also includes this one down here for Astral Aim, which we'll talk about right now. Astral Aim is your second best ability in this tree. Maybe it's first. Maybe this is first and this one's second. I'm not sure. They're both super good. They're both clutch. You're going to want both of them for sure. Astral Aim is shoot a target at max range for your weapon to deal weapons damage, but it gives you a 100% chance to land the critical hit. Why is that important? First of all, it's extra damage. Second of all, it's the critical hit. It's precision damage. It gives you, number one, a chance to extract a seed at range from a seed bearer, which you're going to want to be able to do. And number two, it gives you the chance to potentially knock out the enemy's primary weapon or do some other kind of special damage to them, whether it's just extra damage, armor break, armor piercing, potentially. It could be extra stun damage, whatever. There's a lot of possibilities depending on the enemy that you're shooting at as to what extra cool things you can do to them. But being able to deliver that crit on demand is clutch in a lot of different ways in this game. So this is definitely a must-have ability for all of your Purgators, I would say. Down here, you get the +1 crit damage. If you have a silencer, you get this +2 for here. If you have this ability, you get the +2 here. Now, obviously, if you have this, you're going to have this one. So that's +5 damage if you're using the silencer that you're going to do with your crit. Now, this particular one only is for this ability, right? So this point doesn't affect your normal crits from just shooting your weapon. But still, +5 on the crit, really good. This ability right here, another really great one. When this knight crits a target with a ranged attack, they have a 50% chance to gain an action point. More action points means more killing, which is good. Always want more action points every chance you can get. And with this ability here, you have that chance to get that twice every round. Now, you can only use Astral Aim once per round, even with this. You can only use it, but you have a percentage chance to just crit normally as well. And if you land that crit, you get that 50% chance to gain the extra action point. So you're potentially gaining 2 action points per turn just from doing your crit damage. So that's really good too. This ability here is, again, this grants armor piercing to the crit damage. Same thing as here. Armor piercing is okay, and I think it's only okay. There are situations where it's going to save the day for sure, but is it worth the extra skill point? I don't really know. So that's up to you. If you want it, great. If you don't want it, you're not going to probably lose the game because you didn't pick it up, right? In all likelihood. All right, looking up here. The other thing I mentioned in my Interceptors video was that if you want a Grenadier, this is the class to do it, the Purgator class. And here's why. This section of the skill tree here gives you an extra Wargear slot specifically for grenades. So the extra Wargear slot is always good. Anytime you can pick up an extra Wargear slot, you want to do that. This in this particular case, you must equip grenades here, but having grenades along on your missions is never a bad thing, especially if they're free and you don't have to give up something else potentially that you want to get them. Now, if you really want to go whole hog, you can get +1, +2 ammo. So you get 3 uses of your grenades every turn, and that can be increased even further. Some characters get a natural skill ability, I think, to get an extra grenade. I've seen armor that increases grenade ammo and grenade damage. And then this last bit, so you can get gear to get even more grenades, and then this gives you +1 area for your grenades, and so that's really good too. You're going to hit more people with your grenade every time you throw it, so never a bad thing there. You want the Grenadier, this is your guy, and he can really benefit from this. You can even, if you really want to, go with 2 separate types of grenades in your 2 Wargear slots that you now have, and you can carry 6 grenades instead. Now, why would you want that? There are missions that have the glorious deed of kill so many enemies with grenades, and so being able to pack enough grenades to do that is going to allow you to easily win that glorious deed without really having to rearrange too much with the rest of your soldiers. If you're carrying the grenades anyway, it's really not that big of a deal to just use them at the right time to get the glorious deed done, and that's extra requisition for you. So that's a really nice ability to be able to do this. All right, the last ability down here in the lower right corner is the questionable one. Arcane Weapons. Deplete all ammo. Target a knight at any range who gains +1 damage per 2 ammo for their next ranged attack. So you're basically giving up all of your ammo to add a little bit of damage to some other knight that can be all the way across the screen from you. It doesn't have to be close. The problem is this is expensive to use. I mean, look at the cost of this thing. So let's say you've got, let's say you've got a silencer. So you got the 4 ammo there. You've got +2 ammo for this 2 abilities. Let's say you pick them up too. You've got 6 ammo. You're going to do +3 damage. You're going to add 3 damage to your companion knight's next shot. 1 shot, 3 damage. But it's going to cost you 1 action point, 2 will points. It actually costs you 2 action points because you also have to reload because now your weapon's empty. Now, maybe you've got the auto reload and maybe it hits. Okay, good. But you still use that ability and you're not going to be able to use it again next turn, you know, for the rest of the turn. So you still used it. And so it still kind of has cost you. This one here also adds +1 crit damage per 2 ammo that you spend on them. And then this one here is the warp charge. Activate this to give the boon +1 damage per 1 ammo depleted instead of per 2. So, but this costs you another will point. So now you're here. Now you're adding 6 damage in our scenario with our Psi Cannon and our extra 2 shots here. You're adding 6 damage to the next shot that other knight does, which is good, right? Maybe your knight doesn't have line of sight on the target, and this is the only way that you can, you get engaged or whatever for this particular turn. Now you're adding 6, but look, it's still costing you a lot. It's costing you the 1 action point, 3 will points, plus the reload is another action point in all likelihood. With the range 18 Psi Cannon, couldn't you just move and take the shot yourself? I don't know. Maybe you can't. It's maybe you're way far, or maybe you've got an incinerator in your Purgator's hands and his range is limited to 5 and he just can't get there, or even the 10, for the Psi Cannon. Maybe he just can't get there. In that case, yeah, maybe this comes in handy, but this is a lot of skill points to spend for something that you might use, right? If you're not going to absolutely use it, then probably you don't want to skill into it. If you are going to skill into it, I think you have to go all the way, and I think you have to pick up all 3 of these abilities. This one here is just +3 max will points, which is good. +3 will points is a lot, and you'll not be hurt for having them, but I don't think this is worth skilling down to get the 3 will points necessarily. So if you're going to go for this, you're going to want to go whole hog, right? Grab this, grab both of these. Mostly you want the warp charge ability more than the crit damage, so that you gain the maximum for the ammo that you're spending. And then what you want to do is you need to augment that further with the proper gear, right? You want to look for a weapon that has extra ammo above the base model. I saw in my game, I saw a bolter, a storm bolter that had 6 rounds of ammo, which is double its normal capacity. So then you got 6, 7, 8 rounds. Now you're doing, and if this particular guy gets +1 ammo for his special skill. So he's got 9. Now he's doing +9 damage. That's a lot more justifiable for the amount of action points and will points you're spending than 2 points is, or 1 point, or whatever. So if you're going here, go all the way and then back it up with extra ammo from your gear. You could even potentially, in that case, if you really want to do that, you could even go for Wargear that adds ammo to your weapon as well. So I don't think it's worth it myself, but maybe you see a use for this that I don't see. That's entirely possible. Or maybe your style of play benefits from that more than mine does. That's entirely possible as well. I don't ever like to say don't do something because it's no good at all, because I recognize everybody's got different play styles, and maybe you do things differently than me, and that's perfectly fine. But from where I sit and how I play, this is probably the worst. Yeah, definitely the worst ability in this tree. And it's really just not that useful unless you're really going to commit to it. And then it's only moderately useful, I think. So that's my opinion on that. And that's all I got. So that covers the entire tree. I think we've talked about everything for skills here. Basically, when I'm building out a Purgator, I go straight for kill zone immediately and probably pick up warp charge on it as quickly as I can after that. Also go right after that, go for Astral Aim and probably the extra crit. And then at some point soon after that, maybe not immediately, grab this. Definitely work over down into here next and get this ability here to auto reload. And then from there, you can kind of decide where you want to go. Is this absolutely required? It's not absolutely required, but if you pick it up, you're going to save yourself so many action points from hitting the auto reload that you're gonna be in much better shape. After that, you can go kind of where you want. If you want to do Grenadier, you can move up into here. If you want the extra debuff, you can move up into there. If you like the silencer, you can move up into here. You're gonna want this ability too. You're gonna want both of these. Extra ammo is always good for this guy. So that's how I would build out if I were you. But a lot of it depends on exactly what you want. I still think Killzone and Astral Aim are absolute must-haves. I don't know how you would not have them. I guess you don't have to have them. Obviously you can build without them, but I think they're early on really good, and I think you definitely want both of them. So let's talk about gear. When we load this guy out, we're looking at power armor. You cannot use Terminator armor. So what you want to look for in this guy, he is very, very, very willpower hungry, very willpower hungry. And so you want to get him gear that gives him extra will points. Is he the most will point hungry guy out there? I don't think so. I think the librarian is, but I think he's probably second. And so any gear that you have that grants extra will points, you probably want to put on him. Anything that grants focus would also do well on him, for the ability to trigger those autos more often, especially after you pick up the ability to do them twice. So extra focus on this guy is good. Our armor that grants extra ammo is good for him. If you're going for the Grenadier, you might look for an armor suit that adds grenades. The ranged weapons, let's look at them real quick. We've talked about them already, but let's just real quick look at the Psi Cannon. Like I said, you've got damage 5, range 10, pretty short range, about the same as your bolter. Only 2 ammo. This is kind of the drawback of the Psi Cannon here, is you have to reload it a lot. Psychic Onslaught is its special ability, plus 2 will points, plus 1 ammo. So you're doing 1 action point, 2 will points, 2 ammo points. But that gives you a blast over area 2 that deals 4 damage. This can be increased with those abilities up to, I think it was up to 6, and over up to area 3. So that's a big area. Area 3 and 6 damage under that area, you're gonna be liking that. It's a really good way to soften up the bad guys and make them easier to kill one by one to pick up for the will points. Do you want to kill everybody with the area of effect attack? I don't think you do. And the reason why is because if you kill more than one enemy with a single shot, you still only get 1 will point, no matter how many enemies die. And so I like to use area effect attacks to soften them up and then pick them off with single shots if possible. So this is a good alpha strike, especially on that first turn, especially if they all scramble and end up together. Boy, you can just get in there. And if you really, really want to, if you're carrying a grenade too, you can hit them with this, and then you can throw your grenade and blast them apart and put them out in the open for your other soldiers. He can also overwatch with this weapon, which is fine. These extra ones, if you have them, are just the standard plus one crit damage and plus 5% crit chance. If you got them, you might as well use them. For the silencer, silencer's an interesting weapon, and I do like it. I don't use it that much, but it's a good weapon. Damage is only 4 versus 5, but it's range 14 with 4 ammo, so good ammo capacity and really good range. Plus we saw the ability to up that range to 18 with that skill once he skills into the silencer tree. But disrupt shot is another key ability that is nice to be able to throw around whenever you want. Plus 1 will point, activate to add afflict disrupted 100% for 1 turn. Disrupted stops a lot of things from happening. It stops overwatches, it stops suppression fire, although if you're the one being overwatched or suppressed, firing this at them will trigger that first, so it's not going to do you any good if you're being this soldier's being suppressed. But if he's not the one being suppressed, he can get in there and he can stop it from happening to another one of his battle brothers. And so it also does things like some demons have parry. So if your Justicar is going to go up there with his hammer, for instance, and beat on a demon that's got parry, you can disrupt him first, and then the demon doesn't have any chance to parry, and your disruptor can get in and doesn't have to worry about wasting an attack and an action point by getting parried off. So disrupt is a great ability, and being able to throw it around, like I said, on demand is really good in a lot of situations. Scatter shot is the area of effect attack that the silencer brings to the table. It is a cone, range 7, arc 45. So your Overwatch cones are range 7, arc 30. So this is an Overwatch cone that's half again as wide, so 1.5 times as wide, slightly wider, same range, deals plus 1 damage per 2, burns all your ammo. So again, you've got 4 shots, you're doing 6 damage over 45-degree arc at range 7. That's respectable, right? And if you've got more ammo, then you're doing more damage, so it's even better. You know, you get the 2 plus 1 ammos, now you're doing 7 damage instead of 6. And you'll find versions of the silencer that do more damage, probably too, or it might have more ammo. So either one of those is good in this particular case. The range 7 isn't as good as the Psychic Onslaught from the Psi Cannon, which is range 10. It's a little tougher to get into range 7 and use this really effectively, because you have to even get closer than 7, because you want to get more than one guy in the shot potentially. And usually they're not standing shoulder to shoulder next to each other. Sometimes they do, I guess, but if you really want to get a bunch of guys in, then this is something you want to get really close and use up close and personal. And sometimes they come to you, and that's easy to do. But for your alpha strike on your first turn, this is harder to get to use than the Psi Cannon is. So the third one that you can use is the Incinerator. My first thoughts on this is, why would you? But you can. 4 damage. It does all of its shots, whether you charge them up or not, are range 5, 60-degree cone. So again, slightly shorter than an Overwatch cone, but twice as wide. So it's okay, but it's really hard to get this thing into combat, especially if you don't have speed boosts or anything like that. 3 of 3 ammo. It has the Flames of Purity ability, which is its kind of alpha strike. +1 damage per 2 ammo spent, depletes all ammo. Again, with your extra ammo, you can do, 6, maybe 7 points of damage in that cone. Or you can put down the Prometheum spray, which is going to put down a burning hazard on the ground over arc 60 at range 3, +1 per 2 ammo spent for 1 turn. Depletes all ammo. This one I don't like. And the reason why let me tell you why I don't like burning in general, is because burning does only 2 points of damage per turn, which isn't very much, especially later in the game when you're up against things that have 30, 40, 50 hit points. 2 points of damage is basically nothing at that point. But not only is it not much damage, fairly insignificant, even if that 2 points is going to kill the bad guy, they're going to get their next turn before it happens. So that's one more turn that they get to attack you, to try and kill you, to, do whatever they're going to do to your knights before they die. And so it really, in my mind, is kind of useless. Bleed has the same problem. It doesn't take effect until after their turn is done. And so I don't know. I don't like it as any kind of anything you want to depend on, I guess. So those are the weapons. Again, if you're going to use an Incinerator, put it in the hands of a Purifier. Don't put it in your Purgator's hands. He's not going to be able to really make the most use of it. Wait till you have Purifiers and skill out a Purifier to really, really use the Incinerator well. All right, let's talk about one more thing. Let's talk about your Wargear slot. There's no bad choices for Wargear on this guy, okay? I don't think, there's one bad choice. Let's start off with the grenade. You can definitely load a grenade onto this guy. This gives him another area of effect attack that doesn't cost any will points, right? So you're down to the end of the battle. You're out of will points. You can't use your Psi Cannon Psychic Onslaught anymore because you just don't have the will points to do it. Throw that grenade, man. Just chuck it out there. Spread the damage, spread the love, and do what you can and soften up the bad guys again for the rest of your teammates, okay? Really clutch. Also, frag grenades do knockback, which can be very, very useful in a lot of situations. Knockback will stop overwatches. Knockback can also knock enemies off the edge of the map, as long as they're not immune to knockback, which several of them are, but not all. You can knock them off the edge of the map, they'll plummet to their death, and that's a whole bunch of damage that you don't need to do afterward. They're just dead. Now, if there's a hole in the middle of the map, you can't normally knock them into the hole. It's been my experience that they get knocked over to the other side or off to the edges or whatever. You don't knock them into a hole in the middle of the map, but you can certainly knock them off the edge of the map. So grenades are always good. Servoskulls, also always good, especially the Meta-K skulls. You can have extra healing. It's free, doesn't cost you anything to activate this guy. And he's got range 10 and automatically just does 5 heal on one of your companions or yourself if you want to use it. And also does Purify, which gets rid of all negative status effects off of your knight. So if you're hobbled, if you're blinded, if you're plagued, whatever, it's gone. You're done. So these servoskulls are super clutch, especially early on when your knights aren't quite as tough, their gear isn't quite as good, and they're taking a lot more damage. Then you want to definitely have some servoskulls along. You're not going to go wrong by loading up your guys with servoskulls. Equipment. The only thing he really is not going to use is the Domina Liber Demonica, which gives him plus crit damage and plus crit chance for melee attacks. If you've got a melee weapon in this guy's hands, I don't think you're really putting him up to his full potential. Even if you got a good bolter on his arm, I think he gains a lot from the area of effect attacks from his heavy weapons that you're giving up by giving him a bolter and a melee weapon. If you want that, put an interceptor in, give him that melee weapon instead. Put heavy weapons in your Purgator's hands, unless you've got a very, very specific and good reason not to. I think you're going to go on. Now this, on the other hand, the Sacred Incense is very good for him because it's plus max will points. Again, this guy's very will point hungry. He's going to spend a lot of will points over the course of the battle doing his area effects, doing his kill zones, doing his blinds. It's going to cost him a lot, and he's not going to get them back as fast as he's spending them. He's just not. And so a large reserve of will points early on is going to be your best bet. And so more will points, you're not ever going to go wrong. Like I said, you can also look for armor that grants extra will points as well, and you're not going to go wrong with that either. That's kind of how you want to fit this guy out. Also, if you get the extra grenade slot from the skill, that's just extra, right? And you can use whatever you want in this Wargear slot, and you'll always have grenades with you. And like I said, if you really want to, and you have access to 2 types of grenades, you can equip 2 types of grenades in your 2 Wargear slots, and you really go whole ham with the grenades. All right. So last thing, how can we help this guy out with our other knights? He, again, needs will points. Always needs will points. So if you have a chaplain that can grant will points, or less usefully, if you have a paladin that can grant will points, he's always going to want them. The only, like I said, the only class I think that's more will point hungry than this guy is probably the librarian. Maybe the interceptor, I'm not sure, but this guy needs a lot of will points. So if you got a chaplain along that can grant will points, that's good. If you got a paladin along that can grant will points, that's okay. The problem with that is the paladin doesn't have very many will points to begin with, and all of his will point bonuses are on the edges of the skill tree, so it takes him a long time to get to them. So that's less useful, I think. The Justicar also can grant will points with his Honor of the Chapter ability. This guy isn't ever going to be, he's never going to say no to more action points. That's more grenades thrown, that's more shots taken. You know, if he can send out his area effect attack, and then he gets a couple more action points from the Justicar, maybe he can kill 2 of those guys he just softened up, and that will let him gain back some of those will points that he just spent. The Apothecary also has an ability where he can heal and grant an extra action point. I don't think that's nearly as useful. Number one, it's expensive to do that. If you have to heal the guy anyway, maybe you do that, but I don't think it's worth it for just the extra action point in most cases. But the option is there if you're skilled into it and if you can spend the will points for it. That's a lot of ifs, especially in a longer battle. So maybe that's not so useful, but really what you're looking at, anytime you can give this guy extra action points that are useful amounts and save him or give him more will points. Those are the 2 things that are really going to help this guy out the most. So, all right, so that's going to be about it for this particular video. I think that's all I have to say about the Purgators. They are a great class. In your early game, you might want to take 2 in and really be able to deal with those cultists quickly before they become a problem. With 2 of these guys, both with area of effect attacks, you're going to be able to just squash hordes of those poor cultists and get the job done quickly, and that's going to save your knights a lot of beating. Now, don't neglect your other knights, because you do need to you do need to skill up your other knights and get them all to a good level. But you know, early on, if you want to bring 2 of these guys and maybe like a Justicar and Apothecary, or a Justicar and an Interceptor, you could probably, even with the amount of damage you're putting out against weaker opponents, you might be able to get away with not having an Apothecary at all. Just put a couple of servoskulls on some of your guys and make sure that you have some healing ability, and use your aggressiveness and your area of effect attacks and your alpha strikes to just do heavy damage to the enemy so they can't shoot back at you. That's kind of how you might want to build out. But again, don't neglect your level ups on your Interceptors or your Apothecary or whoever else that you need. You're going to need them later in the game, so don't neglect them completely. That's about all I got. So if you've enjoyed this video, do me a big favor, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button too, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching.